All right, all right, all right, all right. If everyone wants to start making their way back to their seats, we're gonna get started and kind of shift gears this morning. We want to welcome our online audience. Shout out to those on the YouTubes. If you don't know who I am, my name's Michael, and this is Discovery Church. And if you're on the Discovery Church website, you probably know who we are. And so, if you stumbled upon this, welcome. We're glad that you're here. Man, it's obviously January 1st. We talked about this already, right? And a lot of times this time of year, people start thinking about goals, and people think about resolutions, and people think about new starts and fresh beginnings, and that's actually what today's title is of today's message. But how many of you have ever gotten just a little bit cynical with New Year's resolutions? How many of you, if you don't mind sharing, have set New Year's goals this year? Anyone? Or we've given up on that dream? We've got some. Okay, right on. I know for me, a lot of times when it comes to this idea of New Year's resolutions or New Year's goals, a lot of times I end up just getting super cynical about the whole conversation, about why even bother? Why even go down this path? Why even go down this road or this route? And I think a lot of people that are that way. And I think that there's a lot of cynicism around New Year's and around New Year's resolutions. And I was looking up statistics this last week, just kind of looking at, and you may have heard these before, but they say the average New Year resolution doesn't even make it to February. About 80% of people give up on their goals before the end of the month, and then the 20% that are left make it mid-February, maybe even March, before they just give up on the goal, or they forget about the goal, or the goal that they had ceases to be a priority. And so if you're anything like me, you might have a tendency to look at that kind of stuff and feel cynical about it, and feel like the idea of something magical happening because our calendar flipped over is a silly thing to look at. What's different today than yesterday? Why, just because we arbitrarily decided that today is the beginning of something new, why does that have to be a symbolic thing? And I know for a lot of people this time of year, and I used to do this a lot more previously than I do now, it gets to be about this time of year, and I think about things that I want to achieve in the year, or the goals that I've set in the year. And so in the past, it's been stuff like, I want to read a book, one book a month for the whole year. And so I'll set out the goal, I'm going to get through a book a month. And then, so naturally, I stop and go, well, I had that same goal last year. And how did I do last year? And I look back and I go, oh, well, not very good. Or it'll be something like, I've had the same New Year's goal for probably the last 10, 15 years to learn Spanish. And, I pull up my Duolingo app, the little app with the owl that does introductory Spanish lessons. And I pull it up like, oh, I got to, get in there and learn a new language. And I look up and it's like, I'm on lesson 3. And so then it gives me a little pre-assessment test, and my skill set today is exactly the same as my skill set was a year ago, which was exactly the same as my skill set was the year before, going all the way back to the handful of Spanish words that I learned my freshman year of high school, when I decided that taking a foreign language class wasn't worth my energy. And so sometimes there's this idea of looking back on previous goals and feeling like I still have that, deep in there, I still have that want to accomplish that thing that I haven't accomplished yet. But I'm just discouraged now because I'm entering in year 47 of setting the same goal, and I still haven't shed that last 15 pounds, or I still haven't learned that foreign language, or I still struggle with the same shortcomings maybe in my spiritual life, or maybe it's an addiction, or I still haven't mended that broken relationship. I still haven't called that person that I need to forgive. And this time of year, we can look back at all of the things we haven't accomplished. And sometimes it can be discouraging. And so I was kind of thinking about this and the idea of a new beginning and a fresh start, and why on January 1st should this be a focus, or should this even be a focus at all, or should I just keep doing things that the way that I normally do? Should I be discouraged? Should I be bogged down? Should I be cynical? And so I'm reading through the Bible, as one does when they're preparing a sermon. And I came across this section of Scripture, specifically out of the Message translation of the Bible. If you're not familiar with what the Message is, it's more of a paraphrase than it is an actual translation of the Bible. It was written by a man named Eugene Peterson. And he was a pastor for probably 100 years. And he just passed away a couple years back. And he was just a quiet man that was just devoted to the Lord. And honestly, like, he's someone who I've never met and I never will meet. It's someone that when I read his books and I read his writings, it's someone who really inspires me. And he wrote a book called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And the idea of perseverance, and the idea that God's called you to something, and you're going to keep going that direction, even if it's a long obedience, even if it's a slow obedience, that I'm going to continue on in that same direction. But anyway, he wrote this paraphrase of the Bible that we know as the Message Bible. And what he did was he attempted to take the idea, the core concept of that scripture, and translate it into the most easy to speak and easy to understand for a modern audience. And it's what we know today as the Message. And I just love the way that he worded this part of Matthew. And this verse in Matthew is Jesus talking, and it's talking about him carrying your burdens, and he's talking about casting your cares upon Jesus. And Jesus starts out with a question, and it's put this way in the Message Bible. It says, "Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you will recover your life, and I will show you how to take a real rest." I love that because I think that at this time where people are talking about new and this and those thoughts of shortcomings creep in, and the thoughts of disappointment creep in, and I'm not where I thought I would be in my career by now, or my family's not where I thought my family would be by now, or I thought I would have this figured out by now, or I thought I'd be in a relationship by now, and life just hasn't gone the way that I expected it to go, and I'm just wore out, and I'm tired. And I love that he even throws, and I'm burned out on religion. That life is going in such a way that it even exhausts me to go to church. That when I show up at church where I'm supposed to be encouraged and I'm supposed to be uplifted and I'm supposed to be breathed new life into, I show up to church and man, I'm just burnt out. I'm burnt out on religion. I'm burnt out on going through the motions. I'm burnt out on this just life isn't going the way that I expected life to go. And Jesus is saying, come to me and get away with me, and I'll show you how to recover your life. I'll show you how to have a revived energy. I'll show you how to take a real rest. I find it fascinating that Jesus says that the antidote is rest. But he goes on and he continues, it's not just rest like take a nap. It's like true soul rest. It's true spiritual rest. And it's only found in the person of Jesus. It's learning how to trust him in such a way to where other translations say, cast your burdens upon me. And a lot of times in church settings, you hear stuff like that and you go, sweet, how? What does that mean? What does it mean to cast your, okay, Jesus, here. And then I go home and I'm still laying up late at night, struggling and stressing and thinking about all the things. Well, I haven't really cast those cares at all. But if you're anything like me, you hear a phrase like cast your cares upon Jesus, and you're like, that's really good spiritual speak. It doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. I can't resonate. I don't know what that is. I don't know how to do that. But Jesus goes on in the next verse to say, walk with me, work with me, and watch how I do it. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. You may have heard those phrases before. This is the idea of learning how to commune with Jesus, right? Learning how to be and to rest and just exist in the presence of Jesus. It's like that sometimes feels like this lofty, sure, Michael, but then I got to go to work tomorrow. And I can't just rest in the presence of God when my boss is yelling at me or when I have this client that's blowing up my email that just won't, I'm working on it, and they just won't give me a break, and I can't rest, and I'm feeling the stress, and I'm feeling this anxiety. Then the next thing he says is learn the unforced rhythms of grace. The rhythms of grace, the rhythms of grace, the rhythms of grace. And I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. What does that mean? What does it mean to walk with Jesus, to work with Jesus, to watch how he does it? What does it mean to learn the unforced rhythms of grace? Well, the idea here is that grace is a gift that has been given to you, so you don't have to force or strive or chase after it, and that it comes in rhythm, and that life comes in rhythm, and that there's a natural rhythm to how things go. And so you look at this idea of grace, and you can understand that even in my shortcomings, there's grace for that. Even in my striving, there's grace for that. Even in my inability, there's grace for that. And so there's grace to cover all of that. And Jesus talks specifically about the idea of grace and fresh and new beginning to cover your spiritual stuff in your spiritual life, in your spiritual existence. But I don't think that it's a stretch, and I don't think that's a leap to apply that idea to other aspects of our life. That there's an idea that even in my professional shortcomings, where I'm not in my career yet where I wanted to be. Jesus is saying, hey, my grace covers that too. And even if you never achieve that next promotion, I'm enough. So don't stress about that promotion because you have me. That's what the unforced rhythms of grace is. And there's something to be said about learning to be content in the grace of God. I believe that when we do that even when our circumstances don't change, our perspective does. And there's a lot to be said about change perspective. Seeing things through the lens of Jesus, seeing things through the lens of grace, realizing that some of my ambitions maybe aren't that important to God. That's a hard thing to hear, right? Because my ambitions are super important to me. But God's saying, my grace is sufficient, and I am enough. So even in your brokenness, even in your shortcomings, even in your weariness, even in your burnt outness, that stuff in the big picture is not as important as just resting in me. And so there's something that happens with the worry and the anxiety that's attached to that. Understanding that even if I don't get that promotion, I'm okay. Even if this client is mad at me, I'm all right. Even if me and my wife got in a fight last night, which we didn't, I've got God. I've got Jesus. I've got these unforced rhythms of grace. I think it's beautiful. And then I got to thinking about this idea of rhythm. And there is a rhythm to our world. And so although we may be cynical about it's January 1st, so that's a new beginning or a fresh start, it's actually kind of a biblical concept that everything exists within seasons and that there's a season for things. And thank God that he created a 24-hour day and night cycle. I'm so serious that every 24 hours we get a hard reset. That the sun goes down and we can close the book on the day and the sun comes up and it's a fresh start. And that the things of yesterday, they can go away with the sun going down. And the freshness and the clean slate that rises with the sun, could you imagine just like perpetually existing with no break? Like, there's some times that you just need a hard out and try again tomorrow. I can't tell you how many times at work it gets to be at the end of the workday and it's getting about closing time and time to go home. And I'm looking at the stack of responsibility that I have in front of me. And I'm able to look at that and I'm able to look at the clock and I'm able to go, I guess we'll try again tomorrow. And there's something beautiful about this idea of I can leave today and let today to be today. And I can enter into tomorrow with a new opportunity and a new start and a fresh slate. And this is a concept that goes all the way back to Genesis. Genesis chapter 8, I love it. It says, as long as the earth will remain. So this ain't going anywhere. While the earth remains, there'll be a time for seed time and for harvest. There'll be cold and there'll be heat. There'll be summer and there will be winter. There'll be day and there will be night. And that will not stop happening as long as the earth is in existence. God gave us natural rhythms to compose ourselves. To go, man, yesterday was really hard. But thank God that I can lay my head on my pillow. I can rest my eyes. And when I wake up, yesterday is in the past. And today has its own challenges. Today presents new challenges, but also presents new opportunities. And I heard a quote one time that changed my life. It was amazing. Let's see if I don't mess it up when I say it, because I didn't write it down. It says, opportunity swings on the hinges of opposition. Opportunity swings on the door hinges of adversity. And that where there is adversity, where there is opposition, where there is hard, there is an opportunity there. There's an opportunity maybe for growth. There's an opportunity maybe to learn something. Or maybe there's an opportunity to change your perspective. Maybe there's an opportunity to do something that hasn't been done before. That's a side note. That's a bonus episode. This theme of rhythms and fresh starts is a theme throughout the Bible. We see it again in Psalms. It says, He made the moon to mark the seasons, and the sun knows its time for setting. It was intentional that the seasons come, the seasons go, the sun sets, the sun rises. And then the writer of Ecclesiastes, who's probably the most cynical person in the Bible, I think Solomon wrote it, in all of his infinite wisdom of literally the wisest man to ever live, and he's looking back at the world and going, man, this is all pointless. Talk about being burnt out, wore out, and stressed out. To look back at life and be like, everything is meaningless. Solomon was the first emo kid. And I can relate because I, too, was an emo kid. Jim can relate. But in Ecclesiastes, he says, there's a season for everything and a time for every matter under heaven. And so there's an understanding there. And he even goes on to say there's a time for mourning, there's a time for happiness, there's a time for rejoicing, there's a time for weeping, right? But everything has its season. But the beautiful thing about seasons is they come to a close. They come to an end. COVID in our society has been a season. It's been a rough season for a lot of people. It's been rough just existing within a world dealing with how to navigate life. I saw a meme on Instagram. You know the guy that's like blinking? That's like shocked? It shows 2019, and then it shows him blink, and then it shows 2023. And this idea that the last like 3 years collectively, it's been kind of a blur. It's like, I remember March of 2020. And then we blink, and the world exploded. And then chaos, murder hornets, that was a thing that happened, right? And then it feels like the year 2020, 2021, it was like those years were almost just a blur. And like you can talk to anyone and they're just like, where did those last couple years go? And what happened? You know, we look at our church and we go, where'd everybody go? What happened to everybody? But then you take a step back and you look at the Barna studies and you look at these research groups and they say church attendance across the board is about 30% what it was pre-COVID. Pre-COVID was a 70% difference. And so say what you will about any of what has happened over the last couple of years, there's no denying that that was a significant virus that altered the way that we live. It just did. And there was a season for that. And I am praying, and I am hoping, and I am believing that the sun is setting on that season. In society, in the world, but specifically for the church as well. I've talked to people that stopped going to church when they were forced out and the government was shutting things down and the church went online. They never came back. They tell me they're watching church online, but I don't believe them. Sorry for those who might be watching on YouTube, but if you're there, I guess text me and tell me you're mad at me. I'm just trying to be real, right? COVID was a season. The Bible teaches us that there's seasons. And my belief that the COVID chapter is closing, right? And I think you can kind of see that society-wise. But I believe in the church, we need to just make a decision. And we have, right? My prayer is that there's buy-in from some of those people that never came back. I pray for a prodigal reunion in 2023 of people that have been finding excuses to not come, to feel a stirring and a spurring in their heart, to get back to the fellowship, to get back to what they know they're missing in their life. And here's the beautiful thing. I really honestly believe this. Because there was this hard out on church in 2020, when they come back, church doesn't have to, and I don't think it should, look the same as when they left. We have an opportunity in this new year to create something new and different and imaginative. I don't believe that church going forward in America is going to be, do what you will with it. This is Michael's side tangent. It's not part of the sermon. But this is my honest belief that 5, 10, 15 years into the future in America, that the concert, packed out auditorium, concert hall feel of American church, that's not going to be the standard church in America. I don't think that mega churches are the future of the church. I think that there's a place for those, but my belief is that there's going to be a move, and you can see it happening in this home church movement, and that's a whole nother thing, but a move back to community-minded togetherness within the church. And I think you can do that at a larger scale, and I think that it starts with looking at each other's faces instead of looking at the back of each other's heads. That's a little pet peeve of mine. Maybe next week we'll set the chairs up in a circle. We were joking about that last night, but maybe we'll actually do it. So that we're looking at each other's faces. My oh my, I'm so off topic, it is not even funny. What's new? Nothing. So Ecclesiastes talks about seasons, and the theme of rhythm is found all throughout the Bible, the sun setting, the sun rising. And one of my favorite scriptures talks about that God's mercies are new every morning. That his mercies are new every morning. So what do we do when we're at a point in the calendar that offers us the opportunity to claim a reset? What do we do when we're at the point in Discovery Church's history that allows us to claim a hard reset? Things have been in transition, and here we are on January 1st. It's a brand new year. It's my first Sunday saying, hey, I guess that makes me the lead pastor. Right? And so we're at a fresh start, and it lines up on the first Sunday of a calendar year. And so let's take this as an opportunity to let the sun set. Is that the wind? Wow. To let the sun set on the previous season, both in society-wise, but also with some of the baggage that has happened in the last 2 or 3 years at the church. A lot of it predates before my family even came to this church. A lot of it I'm ignorant to. A lot of it I don't know. And I know for a lot of the people in this room, there was hurt, there was betrayal, there was disappointment, and it was a hard season. And I don't fully grasp and I don't fully understand that because it was before we were here. But I want to serve as an encouragement. Let's find the rhythm of grace. The winter is ending, and new life is springing forth. New flowers are coming into bloom. And let's claim that together. Let's claim a fresh beginning together. So what do we do when we're at the start and we look back and we see the things that we didn't want to see, and we see the hurt that we didn't want to experience, and we haven't accomplished the things we want to accomplish, and we're wore out and we're tired? First off, I take refuge in the idea that we're not alone in these feelings, that we're not on our own. Paul is the rock star of all rock stars when it comes to biblical figures. He wrote the vast majority of the New Testament. And he was God's chosen person to go and to share the gospel to the Gentile church. Like, if anybody is got their stuff figured out, it's Paul. Yet in his letter to the Romans, he says, I don't understand my own actions. I don't know what I do not do what I want, but I end up doing the very thing I hate. Anyone relate to that? And then you tie it into the idea of New Year resolutions. You're like, I am not going to drink a Red Bull this year. And then it's 6 a.m. on the 1st, and I'm pounding it. It was coconut, and it was delicious. And I don't understand why I do the things I do, because the things I want to do, I don't do. But I do the things I hate. And I still got 15 to 25 pounds that I need to lose. And the scales, the numbers are getting bigger and not smaller. And that's like just an easy one to pick because everyone chooses new year or new me. I'm going to lose weight. And then we find ourselves in March and we've gained 6 pounds. I know y'all can relate. But I take comfort in the idea that Paul was there too. He says, I know that nothing good dwells in me. That's a statement. This is Paul. He says, what I'm talking about is actually in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but I don't have the ability to carry it out. I think that sentence right there can sum up the cause of all of our bitterness, of all of our cynicism, of all of our frustrations, and all of our bad emotions. I think we can sum it up right there. I have the desire to do what is right, but I do not have the ability to carry it out. Now, I want to be committed to this thing, but there's just something in me. I can't do it on my own. I want to have some discipline in my life, but I don't have the strength to do it on my own. And a year from now, I'm going to look back at the goals I set, and I'm going to be frustrated, and I'm going to be disappointed because I'm going to be standing in the same spot that I was standing a year ago. And I know we can feel that in so many different aspects of our lives. And sometimes I feel it when I show up to church on a Sunday morning. And I go, last January, Pastor Steve and I were talking about dreams we had for 2022. And I stop. And if I'm not careful, I can get discouraged going. 2023 feels a lot like 2022 did. But then we find the rhythm of God's grace. And saying, be content with Jesus. Be content with what I've blessed you with. What does that mean? What does that translate to? That means we've got 14 people sitting in a circle. And we have each other. And that's more than the refugees living in the underground churches across the world that have a page of the Bible that they cherish and they hold on to. Meanwhile, I've got 97 different translations downloaded onto an electronic device. And then you have perspective. We have big dreams and big goals and big aspirations. We do. We're going to share a lot of those next week. But if the goal isn't first seeking Jesus, the rest of it doesn't matter. If I'm not content with me and my family alone by ourselves in our living room, worshiping together, worshiping in a concert hall is never going to be enough. Jesus is enough. When I'm alone in my Red Bull truck driving to Cottonwood, and the worship music plays, that moment and that intimacy with Jesus is more valuable than an auditorium filled with 700,000 people. Because Jesus cares about the individual. But he also cares about the masses. But we can't lead people somewhere where we haven't been. I don't know how to get to that restaurant that I just made up. Because I've never been there. And so when you come to me after church and ask me where we're going for lunch, I can't give you directions on how to get there. But I have been to In-N-Out lots of times. Not only can I tell you the best way to get there, I can say, hey, better yet, get in your car and follow me. I'll take you there. We got to be in a place as a body but as individuals to lead people where God is taking them. We can't point people to the destination that we've never encountered ourselves. I can't teach someone how to pray if I don't know how to pray. I can't teach someone a good devotional practice if I don't have one. We can't expect people to experience the love of Christ if we haven't experienced it truly, genuinely for ourselves. We can't be generous and affect our community if we're not generous with one another. I had a youth pastor that used to say all the time, if we can't pray for one another in this building, we'll never pray for one another out there. If we can't carry each other's burdens in a safe, small, intimate environment, we'll never be able to handle when the pregnant 16-year-old walks into our building and says, I don't know what to do. We won't be able to handle the hard situations until we learn how to be a church together. We just won't. And so that's why when I talk about entering into this new year, let's be committed to one another. Let's be committed to one. I'm not even talking about Discovery Church. Like, the church will happen. I'm talking about people. Because people are the church. We are the church. Next week, this school could burn down. I'm not hoping for that. I'm not praying for that. We could get evicted. That's a nicer way of saying that. They could decide that they don't want us to meet here in this building anymore. And we could go find a living room of someone who has a big enough house, and we can be Discovery Church. And nothing changes. Right? It's not about the chairs. It's not about the sound system. It's not about the building. That being said, tangible goal 2023, we will have our own building. I'm claiming that today. And it will be full. Right? And so I know that there's tension in some of these things that I'm saying because we're learning how to be content with what we have while dreaming at the same time of what we want. And I think that's the biblical standard. Be content with what you have while you dream for what you want. And Jesus teaches us that he's going to give us the desires of our heart, right? But before, this is the dirty little secret that no one ever tells you. You know, you always hear, Jesus will give you the desires of your heart. The part that they don't tell you is before he gives you the desires of your heart, he's going to change what those desires are. So he's going to change your desires first, and then he's going to give them to you. Right? And so we need to be okay with God changing our desires. And once God changes our desires, he's going to give them to us. It's going to be a beautiful thing. So we're going to enter in the next couple of weeks with a fresh start and a fresh beginning and a new birth and a new chapter. And it's good because it's a blank stinking page. I was going to say slate, and I changed my mind if you were wondering what the long S was. It's a blank page. And with it, we can write whatever we want. Whatever we want. We get to choose what the future of Discovery Church looks like. And then we get to do it. That's awesome. A bunch of just opportunity waiting to be seized. But my belief is we have some preparation in our hearts to do. And I believe that starts with some spiritual discipline. And so this isn't a dogmatic, like, do these things for a better life kind of thing. This is a opportunity to see what God does if we use his game plan. If we put our ideas and our ambitions and our motivations to the side and we enter in using the playbook that God gave us in the Bible, let's see what happens. And so with that are some spiritual habits and spiritual disciplines that I encourage us all to strive for in our life. You know, they're like cheesy, typical things, but like develop a prayer life. Develop a worship life. Develop a devotion life. Commit to community. Commit to fellowship. These are like core values of the church in the early days. They committed themselves to the apostles' teachings. They committed themselves to prayer. They committed themselves to each other. This is in the book of Acts, if you want to look it up. And what was the result? The result was they realized that Jesus was the priority, but also the result was more people showed up to the church daily. Daily, more people came. Daily, more people came. Daily, more people came. Because they devoted themselves, committed themselves, made a priority to themselves. I'm going to do these things. To the teaching, to the prayer, to the fellowship. And so the next couple weeks we're gonna go through a quick little series leading up to our Celebration Sunday on spiritual habits, because that's what pastors do in January. Right? They talk about spiritual habits in January because that's what we do. And then usually that enters into some sort of fast or some sort of 21-day prayer thing. And maybe we'll do that too because that's what we do, right? Or maybe we won't. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. And then at the end of the month, we're going to have a celebration. And it's going to be our first Celebration Sunday, January 29th. And I encourage you to bring every human that you know. Bring every human that you know. Why? Not so that they can hear me preach, because I ain't that good at it. Right? Not so they can hear Kent sing, because even though he has a beautiful voice, he ain't that good at it either. Right? It's not to come and experience our abilities and have me give this beautiful monologue that's going to change your life. Because if you're dependent on me to give a monologue that's life-changing, you're at the wrong place. Because I ain't that good at it. But what I am good at, hopefully, is inspiring and motivating and encouraging us to say, let's come together and let's celebrate. And what's going to be attractive to lost and unchurched people out there isn't a good message. It's going to be the way that we interact with one another and the way that we welcome them when they come in our doors. Jesus said, they will know that you are my followers by your love for one another. Sometimes we're not that good at loving each other. Like, we're really good at smiling and pretending. But then when we're on the side of the road at 2 a.m. with a flat tire, who are we calling? My hope and my dream, we used to talk about this at our church up in Flagstaff. You remember the top 5, like T-Mobile's top 5? Anyone? It was like your 5 faves. Maybe MySpace, your top 10 friends. Anybody? Our goal is for your top 5 to be this church. That on your best day of celebration, when you just became a first-time grandparent, that someone from this church is the person that you want to call and be like, you won't believe we're grandparents. And that someone from this church can celebrate with you. And on your worst day, when you are on the brink of a complete collapse, mental breakdown, and you've got nowhere else to turn, that someone from this church you can call and you can cuss them out and they'll mourn with you and they'll love you and they'll encourage you and they'll be a shoulder to cry on. And that this church will be there for you in the best of days and in the worst of days. That we will learn what it means to be a family. That's my hope. That's my prayer. And I believe that we have an opportunity in a fresh start and a fresh beginning to do those things. So, I'm like halfway through. So, we're gonna wrap this up because I think I've said what I need to say. Seasons are biblical. Fresh starts are God's way of giving us rhythm. And the grace that he extends to us covers all the shortcomings. Believe me, there'll be shortcomings. That's a part of being human, right? This is my first time doing this. So I guarantee you I'm going to mess something up. And I thank you in advance for the grace that you'll have on me. And I'll have grace on you when you're a jackwagon. That's a nice way of saying a jerk. Or maybe a not nice way of saying a jerk. I don't know. I'm excited. I genuinely, from the depths of my soul, I'm excited. My wife and I have been staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning, roughly, for the past 3 weeks, just dreaming about you guys and about this church and about this new year. That we've been staying up night after night, praying over you, talking about you, talking about what this church is going to be able to be. We're in it. 100%. And I believe that when God sees our dedication, he will honor it and he will bless it. But it's not the Michael and Nikki show. Nor do I want it to be the Michael and Nikki show. This ain't my ship. It's ours. And I want us to have ownership and buy-in. And that's what our dream team meeting is going to be like. Let's do this together and see what God does. And so I'm going to pray, and then hopefully we can clean up without getting rained on today. It's too late for that, I'm sure. And again, thank you guys so much for being here, for being devoted, for being bought in. And I encourage you, partner with us. Partner for the future. Partner for the future. The number one way that you can partner with Discovery Church is prayer. We need your prayer. I need your prayer. My family needs your prayer. This church needs your prayer. Pray for wisdom. Pray for leadership. Pray for energy. Pray for help. Pray for new families. Pray for salvation. Pray for everything, right? That's the number one way you can partner with us. The second way you can partner with us is get involved. Y'all are. Thank you. Genuinely from the bottom of my heart, you are all involved. So thank you for being involved, and thank you for being dedicated. And we're gonna honor that, and we're gonna honor you guys for your loyalty. And just, I want you to know, it doesn't go unnoticed, and we thank you so much for it. So stay involved. And the third way is to partner with us financially. And now's not the time for the whole spiel, but we've got some opportunities. If we stay committed with our finances as this church, we'll be able to move and do some things in the very near future if we stay committed. And so I want to encourage you, if you're not giving, buy in. You're not going to ever hear me harp on money, but if you're invested in seeing this succeed, and I know most of you are and most of you already give, let's stay committed in that, and see what kind of opportunities present themselves as we trust God to be faithful. He turned a stinking fish and loaves into a meal for 10,000 people. He can take your $20 and turn it into a building. I believe that. And this church operates on faith, not fear. Right? And so, if you want to see a really cool miracle, I believe that we might even see, if you drop $100 in there, we might even see it tangibly transform into $1 million check. It won't come out of your account either. Wouldn't that be sweet? I'm going to log into the bank account and just see just $1 million in there one day. I'm going to like, sweet, let's go. But I'm so off the rails. Partner with us, and let's see what God does in this next year. Thank you guys so much. Will you pray with me, and then we'll get on out of here. God, thank you so much for who you are. In this coming year, we commit to just trusting you. We commit to following you and allowing you to be the leader of this church. God, I pray that you speak to us in our dreams. You speak to us in our Bible reading. You speak to us in all different kinds of ways that would even blow our minds for it to happen. And God, I thank you for fresh starts. I thank you for rhythms of grace. I thank you for seasons. And I thank you that we're entering into a new birth season, into a fresh start, a fresh beginning. God, I pray for the individuals in this room as they're thinking of different scenarios in their own life, of their own families and their own jobs and their own ambitions and their own goals. God, I pray that they can see this season of 2023 as a fresh start for them to accomplish some of the things that they've been chasing after. And God, I pray for a season of harvest in 2023. God, there's been a lot of plowing, there's been a lot of planting, there's been a lot of work, and there's been a lot of grind over many, many years. And I pray for 2023 to be a season of harvest. We thank you that you designed there to be a season of harvest. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you guys so much for being here. We're going to turn on some music and get a donut and clean this place up. But, man, if you haven't RSVP'd to the Dream Team meeting, you can either just let me know or text my wife or email the church email just so that we have an idea of how many of you all plan on being there. And so, thanks so much. Happy New Year, and thanks for being here.